This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Introducing Fidelity Trader Plus, the next generation of advanced trading from Fidelity. Customize your tools and charts and access them seamlessly across desktop, web, and mobile. For faster trades, anywhere you go. Try the all-new Fidelity Trader Plus. Learn more about our most powerful trading platform yet at fidelity.com/trader plus. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE, SIPC.
Welcome to Japan on Film podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine, and today we are going to be discussing Yakuza Apocalypse, or極道大戦争, the 2015 Yakuza action, fantasy, horror, vampire, a lot of other descriptors I think we can put in that, directed by Takashi Miike. And here to discuss it with me is a returning guest, and that is Jennifer Upton. Jen, how you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me back.
Well, thanks for coming back on. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. But before we dive too much into the movie, why don't you remind people about who you are and what you do?
Thank you. I'm a writer living in London. My book about Japanese films called Japanese Cult Cinema, the Best of the Second Golden Age, has been out for about 2 years now. So you can pick that up anywhere that books are sold online.
Okay, great. Is there any other stuff you've been working on in regards to Japanese film? I think before you also said you're on a podcast as well.
Yeah, I'm starting a new podcast. I'm actually recording my first episode next week as we record this. It's not solely Japanese films. It's going to be called The Cinema Junction, and hopefully you'll be one of my guests. We take one film and then we that's the main station, as it were, for train metaphors, train analogies. And then we go off on tangents that are the other stops along the line. So like, let's say if we did this film, the main station would be Yakuza Apocalypse, and one of the stations would be, we go off on a tangent and discuss Takashi Miike's career.
Okay, cool. Well, you're putting me on the spot doing it live on air, but yes, I would love to be on that show.
I'm sorry.
No, that's totally fine. No, totally fine. Just had to make the joke there. No, I would have said yes, even if you had approached me privately about it. So no worries there at all.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, that sounds cool. So you're recording your first episode now. When are you planning on launching it?
I'm going to drop the episode the first week of February, that first Tuesday. So I think that's the 3rd. And if I can say the first film, like, again, it's not Japanese, but it is, it's a bit of an obscure, a little bit of a lost 80s film called The Pope of Greenwich Village with Mickey Rourke.
I think I've heard the title before, but I've never seen it.
Yeah, mafia film.
Okay,
probably
cool.
the best mafia film not directed by Martin Scorsese.
Okay, awesome. All right, very cool. So we record these seasons way far in advance. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken on my timeline, and if everything goes according to plan, which it very often doesn't, but hopefully all of this season will be coming out starting in the spring. So the show would already be available, so people can go and make sure to look that up and check it out.
Yes, thank you very much for the plug.
No problem. All right. So as I mentioned today, we are talking about Yakuza Apocalypse, directed by one of my favorite directors, who is Takashi Miike, and one of my gateway drugs really into Japanese cinema as a whole. And people have heard me tell my story about him and how I got introduced to him many, many different times. I've mentioned it, a few episodes ago, we talked about Ichi the Killer, so I mentioned it there as well. But how about you? What is your history with Miike? I mean, given your book is about the second golden age of Japanese cinema, you can't really talk about Japanese cinema from the 90s on without at least mentioning Miike. Like, I think he's been such a focal point of it, especially when it comes to the movies that get recognized outside of Japan.
Yeah, 100%. That's how, again, gateway drug is a very, very apt way of describing how I came to Miike. I cannot remember the first of his films that I saw, but I'm sure it would have been either on the Independent Film Channel or the Sundance Channel back in the day. And then his films were also getting regional distribution when I lived in Los Angeles. So I saw Audition in the cinema and Yokai Daisenso, the Great Yokai War, and also Happiness of the Katakuris got a release. So those are probably the first three of his that I saw, and I just fell in love with his work. Oh, and Three Extremes, where he has a short segment in the three short films in that movie. So
yeah, in fact, his was that the one that was actually originally banned from the broadcast?
I think so. Yeah, and it's not
Yeah.
even the full version. It's like they cut down
That's right,
it's, oh my god. Yeah, but it's fantastic. Everyone walked out of that theater silent at the end of that movie. Like no one smiled. Everyone just quietly walked out.
Yeah, there was a time period in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the DVD market was like really kind of at its apex,
Yeah.
before streaming and all that. It was just, there were tons of DVD distributors just, looking for whatever content they could get their hands on. And so with the popularity of The Ring, and then, I mean, not distribution popularity, but just word of mouth popularity of stuff like Battle Royale, because it didn't get a US release until fairly recently. Japanese films, there was like this appetite for these kind of like weird off the wall, Japanese movies, and Miike fit completely into that vibe. So his stuff was like almost always got some sort of release, even if it was just a bare bones ones in the States. And I first discovered him through Audition. And I've told this story before, but it is kind of an interesting story, funny story, because I was my first university I went to, I often commuted back home on the weekends, but this was one of those weekends I decided I was just going to stay in the dorm room. I was just going to rent a movie, order a pizza. And then I go to, back in the day, because there's Blockbuster. So I went to Blockbuster, and I'm looking at the new release wall, and there's this movie called Audition on there. And it's got this cute Japanese woman on the cover holding up this really long syringe, just having this kind of like dark expression on her face. And I'm like, oh, this looks like a shitty horror movie. So I pick it up and I read the back and I read the description. I'm like, this sounds like a piece of shit. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna rent this. I think I'll have fun with it. I'll laugh at it. Maybe there'll be some, and again, I'm a freshman in college this time, so I'm like, maybe there'll be some nice nudity scenes or something like that. So there weren't, and it was not it was not a laugh riot. It was not something that I had fun making out of. Instead, it was something that nearly traumatized me, because once I finished watching it, I cracked open a can of Mountain Dew, and I'm like, I am not fucking sleeping tonight.
No, I think that everyone who discovered Miike through that film feels the same way. Exactly. Again, I saw that. I went to see that by myself after work one night, and there were all these people in there, and again, silence, everyone walking out at the end just like with their heads down, like, oh, what did I just watch? And that phrase, what did I just watch, perfectly encapsulates most of Miike's films. What did I just watch?
Yeah, and that really came to clue when I watched the second Miike film I discovered, which was Gozu. So I was,
oh yeah,
this was like maybe about a year after that, and a friend of mine had messaged me, and she's like, hey, did you like Takashi Miike, right? I'm like, oh, who's that? And she's like, oh, he directed Audition. I'm like, oh yeah, I like that movie. And she's like, well, he's got a new movie out, and it's playing at this local theater. And she sent me the link and everything. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, let me go check this out. So I drove down to this local theater in Chicago, watched it, and I had to park like a block or two away so I parked like a block or two away, walked over to the theater, bought my ticket, went and sat, and I was just myself. There's like maybe 5 people in this tiny little theater watching this thing. And then the movie ends, and I'm just kind of sitting there. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I just get up, walk the few blocks to my car, get in my car, start it up. I start driving down the road, and I get about like maybe 15 minutes away, and then it hits me, and I'm like, and I just start screaming, like, what the fuck did I just watch?
He's absolutely insane, and that's why I love him. Mm-hmm. And that's why I mean, I've never seen a film of his that I didn't enjoy. Although there are a few that I kind of wish I hadn't watched because you don't want to watch them again. Visitor Q was the one.
Visitor Q was the one I was thinking of. Yes, exactly.
I'm not watching that again. This one I'm happy to watch many times, and never Yakuza Apocalypse just for Kairo-kun alone. He's my absolute favorite character in this movie. But yes, I mean, he's in a league of his own. Some people like, I was rewatching this last night with my husband, and he said David Lynch could have made this movie, and I said, yeah, but it's crazier. And we both had smiles on our faces when it ended, and that's usually how I feel about his films. Like, you have to kind of approach his films like that you're in a completely different, almost like a manga, and just let it wash over you. Don't think too much.
See, now I don't know. I've softened in my opinion of Miike in recent years, and I don't know if it's so much that I'm getting older or if he's losing his touch or what it is, but there's something about a combination of the two, maybe because, a few episodes ago I mentioned that we talked about Ichi the Killer, and when I rewatched that, I still enjoyed it, but I didn't have the same appetite that I had for it when I was younger, when like all the kind of like, schlocky type stuff really kind of appealed to me. And it didn't appeal to me on that level anymore. I mean, in large part because I'd seen it all before, but also just like there was just it just didn't have the same effect. I mean, there was a lot of, but I found other stuff I enjoyed about it. Like I was cluing in more on like some of the themes, like some the homoerotic subtext and all that kind of stuff going on with it. The way he's kind of almost criticizing the way that we love these hyper violent stuff, and then he transitions from that to showing us a scene that makes us so uncomfortable we want to look away, and the way he's kind of like punishing us for it. So I was really kind of cluing into it in those types of ways. And I was thinking about Gozu too, which we covered, I think it was last season on the show.
Yeah.
And again, I think that movie I think it's brilliant. I think it's got there's so many different ways you can look at it. There's so much to unpack in there. And then I watched this and I just feel like, I don't know, I think it's fun to look at. I will say that it is fun to look at. I mean, the fight scenes, especially with the frog, are hilarious. I mean, yeah. And we get Yayan Ruhian in. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. If anyone's seen The Raid, like he's amazing. Right? He's an amazing martial artist. So and he was great in it too. So and I love seeing Lily Frankie, but I think my biggest complaint about Lily Frankie is just he shuffled off the board so quickly.
Right.
And normally I love him as an actor, but but it's, and there's so much bizarre stuff going on in here that it's just I think it was too bizarre and there wasn't enough substance to it. And I feel like almost I gotta wonder, was this a case where Miike and Yoshitaka Yamaguchi, who's the writer, did they just go to an izakaya or something and just get incredibly, ridiculously stupid drunk and maybe score some illegal drugs or something along the way and then pound out this screenplay?
That occurred to me about 40 minutes in. That same scenario actually did go through my mind. I was like, I don't know which translation you watched, but I watched the translation that Norman England did. And there's a scene in the movie where the main character turns into the vampire, and his boss leaves him like an invisible, like a blank piece of paper with invisible ink on it, and it's blank. And he holds it over a flame to get the secret message, and it just says, "Stay foolish." And I thought, well, that's the theme of the film, isn't it? Stay foolish and you will succeed. And that's this movie. It's just a series of scenes more than it is a coherent narrative. But it's still entertaining because every time you start to think, well, this isn't going anywhere, something so crazy happens that tops the last scene. It's entertaining in a way that I guess, I mean, I don't want to put the Marvel movies down, but that same kind of tone where it's like, it doesn't really matter. The story doesn't matter. It doesn't, we're watching people do crazy shit, and it's,
I mean, I'm a huge Marvel fan, so
Yeah, no, I am. I am
I
too. I am too. But
I think there's a little bit more going on. I mean, there's I mean, I think I'm trying to look at it from, especially from the perspective of doing this show, where we try to dive deep and analyze it in,
yeah,
in a historical context, in a context of like Japanese society and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just racking my brain trying to think of what to kind of clue in here, and I can't really find a whole lot. There's one thing I have on which we can dive into a little bit as we go on, but for the most part, I really think that this is just kind of a movie where it's a movie when, if you got a bunch of friends over and
yeah,
you're all drinking, you're all eating pizza or something like that,
yeah,
this is the movie to put on, because it's just
yeah.
completely over the top. It's nuts. I imagine if you have access to weed, I imagine this is the
Yeah.
perfect movie to watch when you are
Perfect
high.
movie for edibles. Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
perfect
yeah.
edible movie. There were two things that I clued into, but I don't want to take this movie too seriously, as you said. One was the analogy drawn between Yakuza life and vampirism,
Hmm.
which is, if the civilians don't exist and they all become Yakuza, we are no longer relevant as Yakuza because we don't have anyone to prey upon.
Hmm.
I thought that was a nice little thing that they put in there. And but other than that, I say it's probably easier to talk about the movie from a technical point of view, because the camera work in this movie is amazing.
Hmm.
And not just the action scenes, it's just really tightly, a lot of handheld shots, but when they do fight, you feel every punch. It's really well done. But I could not find how much this cost to make, but it's very much one street and a few inside locations, like
Hmm.
an old fashioned western, like one street. You don't get a greater sense of where this is, or if it's Tokyo. I assume it's Tokyo.
Well,
Um,
they mentioned it's a town name. I can't remember what the town name was, but it's definitely not Tokyo. So
it's
I
not,
imagine
no.
it's kind of like one of these, um like maybe like mid-size areas, like maybe like Kitakyushu or something like that, where
Oh yeah, yeah,
it's not
yeah.
super, connected to other stuff, but there is still a Yakuza presence there. So I
Right.
think it might be that kind of situation.
Yeah, okay. But it looked to me like it's pretty much, I don't, again, I couldn't find a lot on the production, but it couldn't have taken a ton of time to film this. I mean, the action sequences I'm sure took quite a long time, but it looks like, let's just set the camera up here and go.
Hmm.
And it's got that kind of guerrilla filmmaking look, a little more polished than something, I don't want to compare it to Evil Dead, but the handheld camera work, kind of some of the shots reminded me a little bit of the original Evil Dead, and but with a bigger budget. And I just thought it was really tightly blocked and edited very cleanly, like it burns. It doesn't give
Hmm.
you a chance to question what you're seeing. You're just hit with it. And
So
not in the same way. Like I was thinking about this last night. You and I discussed the film Versus, and it's not
yeah.
that. That's more like a live action video game. This is not that. It's different. It's
Hmm.
got its own style, but it's also very kinetic in that way.
So I'm looking at some of the other stuff he was doing around the same time.
Mhm.
And so he made two movies in 2015. There was this one, and there was The Lion Standing in the Wind. Then after that, he made Terraformers in 2016. As the God's Will in 2014 was his last movie there. And I'm just quickly looking through here. So The Lion Standing in the Wind is the story of Dr. Koichiro, who had moved to Kenya to volunteer as a doctor for child soldiers, which sounds really interesting. Oh, I'm surprised I've never heard of
Yeah, I
that.
haven't seen that. Yeah.
And then Terraformers is to colonize Mars. 21st century scientists seed the planet with algae and cockroaches. 500 years later, the first manned mission to Mars loses contact with Earth, and a second spacecraft is sent to investigate. So this just kind of looks like a more of like kind of a schlocky sci-fi thing.
Hmm.
And as the gods will, a group of high school students are forced to play a game of death without knowing who, why, or how.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay. A little bit
it looks
battle
like kind
royale.
of a. It looks like, yeah, yeah. It looks like kind of. It's got some kind of zany imagery there. It looks like. just like one of the screenshots, it looks like a girl is bleeding from so yeah, from certain areas. So
Oh God, okay.
all
right.
So yeah, I'm guessing my guess is, I think what you said about the stay foolish thing, I think that is probably the biggest clue we have to what Miike was intending with this. I think he's just, because he's had an interesting arc as a director where he's kind of moved into a much more commercial direction, where he's doing a lot more like live action adaptations of anime type stuff. I mean, 13 Assassins was massive for his career. It was, huge success. Yeah.
Yeah.
You had Harakiri, Death of a Samurai, Ace Attorney, and Lesson of the Evil, Shield of Straw, all these. And he seems to be alternating a lot between some of these, more mainstream, anime adaptations or manga adaptations, but also, the kinds of thrillers and horror movies he's making, they do seem like much more mainstream flavor than his early stuff. Like, we covered Lesson of the Evil a while back, and I enjoyed it, but my whole thing with it was it felt like it was very restrained for him. So I feel like this may have been this chance where he's just like, he did all this stuff and he just like, okay, now I've got a chance to kind of do something I want to do. And I think maybe this is a case of maybe he was just maybe he just felt like, playing like a kid again type of thing. Like he felt like doing something schlocky and fun.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt watching this. Like, this looked like they had a lot of fun making it, a ton of fun. And just like, you could feel like there's a few films that capture the joy of the process of filmmaking, where you can actually feel that they were happy making it. I don't know if how that comes through. It's just a feeling. But that one shot where Karukun, the frog Yakuza, comes first walking down the street, and it's literally like framed like an old Western, where he's just walking down that towards the camera. And I thought, there's no way the whole crew didn't have a huge smile on their face when they were making this. I mean, as serious as it is, and you're working with money and budget and time, this must have been a blast to make. And good for him, because and what you just said, it was interesting. While you were naming all the films, the different kind of films that he makes, he doesn't have his own style. He's such a good director that if you showed probably a movie that he did from, the early 90s to a movie he did recently, you might not see a signature style. He's very much, even though he's an auteur, he's very much a journeyman director in that way, where he could probably direct anything you put in front of him, any script. But that being said, this film, if you put it on and told me nothing about it, I would think this is Takashi Miike, just because the content is so crazy. But there's no visual style. He doesn't have one thing that he does, and that's partly why I love him. As you said, the gateway drug is that his films are all so unique and different in their own ways. And he's done 100 films now. He's 65 years old. He's still going.
Maybe, yeah.
He's still going. So I'm, one of those guys that you do wonder, because the Japanese film industry is so different, how many of the films he's made where he needed the money, or he just did it for the paycheck. But there's some little spark in even the cheaper ones, even, it's just, there's something about his films that you do feel like he was born to do this for a living, and you feel that spark in his movies.
I mean, I liken the Japanese film industry a lot to the Pulp Fiction writers of like the early 20th century. It is very much that kind of like workman type shift, or even in some ways, it kind of like the old studio system in Hollywood back in the day too.
Very much.
It's kind of like, I think there's something there, or even like what Roger Corman was doing back in the day too, right? Yep. Also that kind of stuff. Or even I can't remember the name, but he was like a famous guerrilla filmmaker, and he had like, anytime like he'd go to like a financier with a script or something, they'd say, "Oh, we don't like that." He's like, "Hold on 1 minute." He'd go to the trunk of his car and he'd pull out another script, and he'd come and show them that one. I can't remember who it was, but one of those guys. And he was also one of those types of like workhorse directors. Miike, and I saw someone, as I was like doing like research, seeing what other people were saying about this, I saw someone describe Miike as a pulp anarchist director. And I think that's a pretty good way of describing him.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah, very well said. Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's just, the more I think about I've not come anywhere near to seeing all 100 of his films.
Same here.
But the ones that I've seen are all so memorable and they're unique in their own ways. And there's always something that you walk away from. Even if if someone asked me, I first saw this film about 9 years ago, about a year after it came out. And it was because a friend had seen it. And she said, "You're going to love this." And I looked and I thought, "Oh, it's Miike. Of course." Yeah. And I said, "Do you know who this is?" And she said, "No, somebody gave her a copy." And I said, "Oh, you need to watch, Auditioned and, all these other films." And she went down that rabbit hole. But even after 9 years, the thing I remembered about this wasn't the storyline. It was the specific images, the frog and some of the fight scenes. That's what you walk away from, is not the story or the acting. It's certain images that and that's film as a visual medium. That's maybe the way it should be.
Yeah, I saw it when it came out on VOD. It was the first time I saw it, and when I saw it, and it's funny, when I was thinking about this, if you had asked me before, and I do remember now after seeing it again that I had seen it before, but if you had asked me like a year ago or so if I'd seen Yakuza Apocalypse, I don't think if I could have said yes or no. Because it's one of those movies that I feel like I saw it, and I know I bought it because I know I had it, but I've got tons of movies. Like you should look at my unwatched library on Plex. It's ridiculous. The movies that
Understood.
I own, but I have not watched yet.
Understood. Same here.
Yeah. So I could have, and I would have said like I own it. I know that. I don't know if I've watched it though, and I think that's why, because there isn't really anything memorable story-wise about it.
No.
And it's like if I was trying to think of some memorable images or something like that, it's something I could have easily taken out of the trailer, and it's a memory of watching the trailer or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, even now, you put a gun to my head, and I just watched this last night, and you tell me describe this movie, I can't tell you what it's about.
No, I can't either. It's just there's Yakuza vampires. I was trying to sum it up this morning, and I thought, how do I do that? It's Yakuza vampires, and then I'm still trying to process the Kappa character. There's a Yakuza who's half human, half Kappa, and I'm not sure if he's dressed up like a Kappa. I'm assuming he's really half Kappa or full Kappa. Because if you've got a frog Yakuza who's not human, it never explains who they are, where they come from, how they got here. It's almost like that little encapsulated world that he created. It could be a comic book, because it's just a world where supernatural things exist and they happen, and you just accept it, and they fight.
And also the frog monster loses his suit, and then he's just has the mask, but he's got the bandages over his navel, and then you pull them off and he turns into a giant frog.
He's not human. He's definitely not human.
And then but then you also have the rival Yakuza captain who decides she's going to start growing children into good civilians, and I'm not sure if it's her psychosis and she's going nuts, or if this is actually something that's possible. And I don't think her lieutenants know either.
No, that's the funny part about this movie, is that the two lieutenants, the young Yakuza who aren't supernatural in any way, are sort of sitting in for us, the audience.
It's like they have wandered in from a different movie. It's like these two guys came in from and this was filmed with Nikatsu. So Nikatsu produced it. So I imagine that there was probably I swear to God, I would not be surprised if this happened. If they just went to the Yakuza movie being filmed next door, and they said, "Hey, you two, once you're done shooting here, just come over to the set. Just come over. Don't worry about it. And
don't worry about
just
it.
Roll with it."
Yes. And that's why I love it. I love that the chaos of it. It's because there's some, I mean, just that I think my favorite moment in this film is that when the frog Yakuza first comes into town, and he's supposed to be the scariest monster of all, the scariest terrorist of all, and he can't walk a flight of stairs without assistance. That one little moment is my favorite moment in the film because it's so quiet, and they're like, watch your step, and he can't see in the suit. And it does feel like a bunch of guys got together, got really drunk, and said, let's just write some scenes and put it all together.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, I would not be surprised if they did the Burroughs method to like the cut up method of this, because it.
Yes, 100%.
There doesn't seem to be any real sense of continuity at all throughout the story. I don't even really know if the main character is the main character. I can't even remember his name half the time. So
Kageyama, is that right? Yeah,
Kageyama, yes, Kageyama. Yeah, I had to just look it up.
It sort of begins like you think he's going to be the main character, and then it goes off and to these weird areas, and you go, okay, well, I guess we're following this character now for a little while.
There's also the priest guy who always speaks in English for some reason, which the version I had, it did not have English subtitles for his subtitles, which got a little bit confusing sometimes. It only had it had Japanese subtitles for his subtitles, but not English ones. So that got a little bit confusing sometimes because his English wasn't always very clear. And it wasn't that his English was bad. It's like sometimes he kind of like mumbled a little bit in it. So it was just kind of hard for me to hear what he was saying a lot of the times.
I was very confused about his character and still am, because
at first I thought he's a vampire hunter, obviously, right? He's he's dressed like a priest, he's got the cross stuff and all that, and he's coming to the Yakuza town that's ruled by this vampire Yakuza. So obviously he's here to kill the vampire, but it looks like no, that doesn't seem what it is though.
No, he's actually part of another syndicate that's like got the Kappa guy in it, and then I had to pause the movie because my husband goes, "What's a Kappa?" So I had to pause the movie and explain and show him pictures of Kappa, which hopefully, if everyone's listening to this, I'm sure fans of your podcast knows what and who Kappa, what a Kappa is.
Yeah, but if anyone doesn't, it's basically like kind of like a turtle spirit type of thing.
Yeah, like a river god from the old Shinto religions, and it almost felt to me like it was starting to go into yokai territory with that. Like now you've introduced a yokai, and I don't know if you saw Great Yokai War that Miike did.
The first one. I haven't seen the sequel that he did. But
I haven't either.
We covered it several years back on the show, actually.
Yeah, it's great movie, and I kind of felt like maybe. Is this kind of like a spirit sequel to that? But then there was an actual sequel. But I love that movie. That movie had a more cohesive and coherent storyline with very solid themes. Whereas this one literally just feels like we got a budget and a bunch of our buddies together and we made a movie. And and oddly, the martial arts sequences in this are fantastic. It's just maybe that was the point. To just make a fun action movie,
I mean, that's what I keep going back to, because the fight scenes there's a lot of fight scenes in here, and they are all very well choreographed. They are very well staged and very well shot too. They're incredibly well done. Although I do think the strength test at the end between Kageyama and Mad Dog goes on a little bit too long. I feel like you could have trimmed some of that there.
Yeah, I felt that way too. Yeah.
But we're going to take a quick break. We're going to take a quick break first, and then we'll come back and we'll talk more about this.
LinkedIn's AI-powered job search can help you find the most relevant roles based on your goals and experience. It cannot help you find something to talk about in the elevator.
So, ride any dragons this weekend?
It can help you find your next job just by describing it in your own words. It cannot stop your coworker from describing their dreams.
So I was flying, right?
And while we can't help you advance in the office foosball tournament, LinkedIn can help you advance in your career. LinkedIn is the network that works for you.
Hey, I like your new RAV4.
Thanks, yours too.
What does RAV stand for anyway?
To me, it's the Remarkably Advanced Vehicle.
Really? To me, it's the Runway Approved Vehicle for its amazing style.
What about Remarkably Adaptable Vehicle because of its versatile cargo space?
Or Really Admired Vehicle?
Oh, or Really Awesome Vehicle.
It really is the recreational activity vehicle. The stylish 2026 Toyota RAV4 Limited. What's your RAV4?
And we're back, still talking about Yakuza Apocalypse. And, I was also thinking about, what you were saying about the Great Yokai War kind of stuck in my head too, because I also was thinking about that too in connection to this. And then you also got, obviously, Miike made his bones in Yakuza movies. Like that was how he was doing. That's one of the reasons why he had such this massive output in the 90s, was because he was basically getting work doing all these direct to video Yakuza movies. And those Yakuza movies, they basically just went to these directors and they said, here's your budget, here's your shooting schedule. Anything you want to do within that has to involve the Yakuza, and then you're free to go. It's kind of like what they were doing. So he was always able to get his stuff in under budget and on time. And so they said, okay, well, let's do another one. And he was able to get like quite a bit of movies done that way, but he was also able to have a lot of creativity and the types of freedom he had with that. And I think maybe if I was going to try and zero in on a hypothesis for this film, it might be Miike parodying himself in some ways.
I didn't think about that, but that's a very good theory.
I mean, because it's got like we got the yokai stuff in there, right? The Yakuza stuff already. You've got the whole the idea of this superior who's got something weird about him, and his underling who is trying to figure out like what the situation is. That's basically the same idea that was in Gozu. And the ideas of like the Yakuza and their role, their connection to the community. I think all this stuff can really just kind of connect together to stuff that we've seen in a lot of his other movies.
Yeah, definitely. There's like, this movie almost is like a little, it almost feels like maybe ideas that he had for other films that were cut, that he wasn't, that he just put them all together and said, here's the buffet. It's kind of how it feels a little bit. But I feel like if you haven't seen any other Miike films, you could still enjoy this just on a visceral level.
Yeah. I think that I think you'd have to be prepared going in. Like you're not getting, like a David Lynch thing here. David Lynch in terms of the craziness, but not in terms of like all the deeper levels below that craziness.
No, I mean, no, not at all.
Yeah.
Although he did make that film where he had the monkey singing and it tries to marry a chicken. It was one of his short films.
I was thinking of Inland Empire, which I have no idea what that was about.
No. Yeah, I think but his tone was much different than Miike's with Yakuza Apocalypse. This is
No, it's almost in a weird way. I think if you're gonna pick like three Western influences for Miike, I think, or if you're gonna try and like find like a US director that was most like him, I think it'd probably be like a mix of David Lynch, David Cronenberg, and Roger Corman.
Definitely Cronenberg for sure. Because some of the body horror stuff and some of
absolutely,
I'm daring you to look at this. Where you feel like you're being dared to look at this. And Roger Corman for sure. Always respected Miike for those early years where some of those early years he made like 5 films in 1 year.
Yeah,
those shot on video film. I mean, that's an insane amount of work. Just craziness.
And and the thing is, and it's funny watching this because this is also much more polished than his other stuff. Like not only filmmaking technique you were talking about, just like quality of the finished product. Because some of those older movies, you watch it and it sometimes it's kind of tough to watch what's happening just because the quality of the film they were using was so terrible.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he must have, again, I couldn't find a lot about the production of this, but he must have had a decent budget for this.
He had to have some sort of, at least for by Japanese standards, I think, definitely he had to have some sort of a decent budget. At the very least, he had to have some, whatever he was using to film with, he had to have some decent cameras or something.
It did play at the Cannes Film Festival
the year
that I couldn't find anything about response because I would love to see what the response was.
No, the only thing I see is that it says that Wikipedia says that production began on April 17th, 2014. Doesn't say when it finished. And it says that it just got mixed to positive reviews, which is just like the overall review response. So I'm not sure what the response was at Cannes. But mostly it's gotten a 63% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay.
Which is actually
I'd
no,
go
that's
a little
higher.
higher.
On Letterboxd, I actually gave this 2.5.
Yeah, that's about right. I'd give it 2.75 just because I really enjoyed Kaoru-kun. That's the reason I love this movie more than any other. And in the end where Kageyama turns into a bat and flies away.
Yeah, that was another example of like a really solid special effect there, because and even better than some of the times when you have seen CGI, like you were talking about with Great Yokai War. I mean, the CGI in that is very, very dodgy. Although one of my theories is that it was dodgy on purpose to kind of show the contrast between because like almost all the technological stuff is CGI, while almost all the kappa are like more traditional effects. So I feel like there was some types of commentary he was making there. But even so, when he's had CGI appear in some of his movies over the years, and this is probably the best I've ever seen it used.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. It's kind of interesting because I went onto Reddit just to see what people thought, and most of them had the same question: what did I watch? What was this? What did I just watch? But I enjoyed it. So, like you said, perfect if you get a bunch of people together, you got some adult beverages, some pizza, some edibles, you're gonna have a great time. For a watch party, it's good.
Yeah, but on that note, I did want to talk about that idea that you mentioned too, because I clued into that too, and I feel like because I was watching it and I'm thinking, I'm like, oh, I got it. They're saying that the Yakuza are like vampires, and so that's the metaphor. But then they come right out and say it. It surprised me. I'm like,
we can't exist without them, so we have to grow a new crop of civilians.
Like, maybe we are like the vamp. I'm like, what? I mean, I guess Miike was maybe this is a way of Miike kind of wagging his finger at all the people who are always confused in his movies. Like, look, I'm gonna put it right out in there in front of you. This is what it's about.
Yeah, I did think that. I thought that was like, she just said it. There's no subtlety in this movie at all.
No, even the theme, the closest thing we have to some sort of deeper theme in this, even that is not subtle.
No. I did have a thought though. Are frogs significant in the symbolism of Japan? But I couldn't find anything.
I don't know. I don't know a whole lot about like animal symbolism in Japan, other than like a few things like Tanuki. Obviously, I know about that. But I don't know much about frogs, so I can't really say one way or the other.
Right. I'll have to look into that because I know. Yeah, if you go back far enough to the animist religions, you'll always find something there.
Right. So, but that idea of the Yakuza being like kind of like basically parasites on the community, that was a really good idea, and it made a lot of sense. And because in fact, you saw this happen as the Yakuza have dwindled in their base of power over the years. They've been trying to find new ways to try and stay relevant. And one of the things they were doing, like in the 90s and the early 2000s, they were buying up stock and like cheap stock. And then they go to the board meetings of like these shareholder meetings, and they like demand to play a seat at the table and all that. And they like start like, bullying people at the shareholder meetings and stuff like that and start throwing their weight around.
Wow.
So that was like one of the ways. Yeah. But you've also had people like, kind of even, trying to use the Yakuza as a way to conduct scams of their own. Like there's one situation I know of a guy a few years ago who was in one of the towns nearby here where the Yakuza were trying to extort him out of money. And they were like threatening him and everything else. And then later they found out that turned out the guys weren't actually Yakuza. They were just putting on a show to extort this guy.
They were cosplaying Yakuza.
Yeah.
But at what point can you kind of say, well, if there's no greater organization here, it's just a couple of guys doing it, but if they're behaving as Yakuza, aren't they kind of Yakuza? Like they're their own little thing, like little independent.
Yeah, but I think it's because in Japanese society there is all that focus on like organizations and all that.
Yeah.
So
and hierarchy.
Even if you're so even if you are technically doing all the same stuff, you're not part of the organization, so you're not official.
Okay, understood. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I was thoroughly confused in this movie about which gangs, with like, how was it that there were two large gangs even operating in such a small town? You'd really just have one, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's possible you have two, because you look back at like the Yojimbo and that kind of stuff, and that was these two gangs that were fighting for control over this one town. So I mean, that didn't surprise me too much, but it was hard to try and keep like the loyalties straight between them. I know that's a subplot and maybe that again is the intent. Maybe this is Miike making a parody of Yakuza films, where it's like in most Yakuza films, it can be hard to like keep track of all the different shifting loyalties. So in this case, he's just like, forget it. That's kind of the commentary here, is maybe we're not even going to try to keep track of it. We're just going to throw all this stuff at you and hope hope you don't notice.
And one of the characters did say towards the end, it's about the fight. We just like fighting, and so that's why we do what we do. It's not about who wins or loses. It's about the fight.
Well, and to what you said about the idea that maybe they were doing this just for, the fight choreography and all that. I mean, that could also be another example of stating what their intent was with this movie.
Yeah, to just make a silly movie with a lot of fights in it. He kind of does say it right out loud. Yeah, in a couple of spots. Like let's throw a bunch of stuff in the pot and see what comes out.
But I also, I kind of wish this was touched on more, because it's an interesting idea. This idea of this Yakuza captain facing this existential crisis over the fact that there are no more civilians in the town. I mean, honestly, that idea on its own could have made for an interesting Yakuza movie, especially like, if you think about, like Kitano doing something along the lines of Sonatine or something like that. That would have been something interesting that I could see fitting in like one of his movies.
It's interesting too that this movie is 10 years old, 11 years old now as we record this, because really, if everyone is a Yakuza, then it's just kind of, and that's kind of where we're going in the world right now. Everyone's behaving like a Yakuza. and so it's 10 years ahead of its time, this movie, a little bit, because if everyone's a Yakuza, then at some point won't the whole thing just implode if everyone is corrupt?
I mean, that's a good point. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. But yeah, it's like everything is a grift these days. Like I cannot even every time I see anything online, or like for like an app advertisement or whatever, my first thought is always, this is a grift. I know there's a grift involved here somewhere, because like everything is a grift these days.
Every startup, every app, if you go, do you have WeWork buildings in Japan? Like the shared work environments?
I think we did, but I mean, there's shared work buildings, but I don't know. I think there was some WeWork building at some point nearby here, but
it's, if you go in there and just ride the elevator for 5 minutes and you hear people's conversations about how they're all a startup trying to get investor money. It's all a grift, and the building itself is a grift. the guy who created WeWork is a grifter.
Behind the Bastards did something on him a while back.
It's like you walk in there and you just feel like you're in this weird sort of, somebody should make that. Miike should make that movie. I mean, you're just in this where everything is a grift. And if everybody is behaving like a Yakuza, essentially, and trying to figure out how to get the most money out of people who have money, then at what point does the whole system just implode?
Well, which is the irony, because nobody has money anymore.
No, it's like I know. Well, I thought about that in the scene of this movie where they're all the Yakuza vampires marching down the street, and I thought, well, they're going to run out of food, or they'll have to move over to the next town, and because they all just kind of disappear after a while, and you assume, okay, well, they're just, I mean, they never said, are they going to starve to death? It's just they run out of people to eat.
You mentioned Marvel films earlier. It reminds me of it wasn't technically a Marvel film because it wasn't before Marvel Studios, but it was the first Blade movie, right?
Oh, yes.
He has this whole plan to turn everybody into vampires. And to their credit, there was a scene where they addressed this idea, but it
Yes.
was edited out of the final. But when you're watching that movie and you're thinking like, what if everyone's going to be vampires? What are you guys going to do for food?
Yeah, exactly. It's like there has to be a balance. There has to be
Mm.
normal civilians in order for these vampires to exist. They can't exist without us, basically. So, and the guy in the movie, the shopkeeper, Tetsuo Watanabe, the actor, plays the human who kind of knows the deal. And he's got his two chalkboards like a school teacher, and he's explaining, okay, so if you eat too many civilians, then you're gonna have a problem. The balance will be off. And I love that scene because I thought, okay, it's a cute little scene, you
And
know.
also, I didn't understand how the rules of vampirism even really worked in this world because,
No,
I mean,
they're
they're
out in the
walking around in
sunlight.
broad, yeah, they're
Yeah.
walking around in broad daylight.
Yeah.
Um, Lily Frankie's character, what was his name? Kamura. He he periodically has to drink blood from people, right? We see at the beginning after he, fights that guy and he goes to the girl and he bites her and everything. Um, but there's never any mention of him creating a whole lot of other vampires. And yet Kageyama, the first time he bites someone, right away they turn into vampire. They bite someone, they turn, and it creates a whole epidemic where everybody in town becomes a vampire.
Yeah, it
So
didn't. The only thing it didn't explain it other than Kimura's got all those Yakuza in the basement doing the knitting class,
mhm.
and they're shackled, and he's trying to turn them into civilians so they'll taste better because Yakuza blood doesn't taste very nice and it's not
Yeah,
nutritional. So, but there was no consistency in any of the rules for the vampires.
right.
None, which is fine. Yeah, I can look over. I can look that the other way at that.
But I mean, I think I'm really struggling to try and think of other stuff to mention about this movie. But again, there's not a whole lot in here. It's just mostly just
No,
a bunch of really crazy stuff that happens over and
yeah,
over again. You just kind of like just gotta accept that this is the way it is.
that's just yeah. You just it's not so much. This is not yeah. You have to let it wash over you and go. It's just a fun popcorn movie. That's pretty much what it is.
Did you have anything else you wanted to mention about it? Anything else that you think we haven't talked about yet?
Um, no, I'd kind of like to see, in a weird way, like to see where this universe could go. Like if yeah, what happens to this town? Like at some point, it's just gonna they're all gonna die. They never explained any of it, and maybe that would be interesting if one or two of them kind of leaves and goes somewhere else, and they broaden the world. I would, but obviously I do think it was never that well planned out. I think he just they had a bunch of ideas and they said, let's go make this movie. And he's never made any, I mean, there's never been any rumblings of a sequel or anything like that. And I don't know how it did financially in Japan. I'm not sure how successful this was.
Again, there's not a lot about that.
No. Yeah.
So yeah, all I know is it was released in all it says it was released in June 2015 in Japan, but it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't say anything about, the success it had or didn't have. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
honestly I have no clue.
No, it's kind of an enigma. The whole thing. I thought, gosh, I couldn't even find anything like in like old Japanese newspapers or anything like that. It was almost just dropped. But
Yeah.
sometimes Nagatsu does that. Sometimes they'll just, here's another Nagatsu movie. So
Yeah, I just imagine they maybe they had some deal with Miike or something where he had to make a certain amount of movies and then he could make something of his own and then
mhm.
he just decided to throw this out. I don't know, but whatever the
Yeah,
case was, I mean, again, it looks nice. I like it
yeah,
does.
yeah,
It has great visuals. The effects are really cool. The fight scenes are incredible. I mean, even the guy who's in the fighting in the frog suit is doing some excellent work in that.
yeah. I would imagine that was really hard
I
for
know.
him physically and hot. Like that must have been really hard
Yeah.
to because his to make all the moves, the martial art moves in that suit, you'd have to exaggerate your movements to get through all that material physically.
Right.
You know, I just kept thinking that poor guy. You know.
But yeah, other than that, like there's not a lot to say about the characters and all this. I mean, there's some interesting ideas that get touched on here and there. I mean, the very idea of a vampire Yakuza is an interesting idea in itself, but it's not really explored. The idea of like this existential threat to the Yakuza with depopulation, that's an interesting idea, but again, not really explored. It's just all this kind of stuff is just, you know, window dressing for just a whole bunch of fight scenes.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think that was the point. I maybe there wasn't a point, like you said. It was a night out at the izakaya, and hey, I got an idea. And, you know, somebody should ask Miike when they interview him, what is the deal with this movie? Like, honestly,
if anyone who has some connection to Miike is listening to this show, I would love to pick his brain about this movie and his career in general. Like there's just
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I love that he sees the possibilities in filmmaking, and he doesn't necessarily allow restrictions to get in the way of his ideas, no matter how crazy or discombobulated they are.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good note to end on. So, Jen, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me at jenuptonwriter.com. I'm also Gen X London on Instagram and thecinemajunction.com.
Okay, great. We'll have links to that stuff in the show notes, so you can check that out. As for us, japanonfilm.com is the website. We are japanonfilm.com on Blue Sky, Japan on Film on Instagram and Facebook, so please make sure to check us out there. And we are part of the Film Stories podcast network, so please check them out at filmstories.co.uk and listen up next for any other shows that are coming up here on the network. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
The Japan on Film podcast is produced by me, Perry Constantine, in conjunction with the Film Stories Podcast Network. Visit japanonfilm.com for show notes, episodes, and information about being a guest yourself. You can also reach out to me on the website's contact form if you have questions or comments about Japanese movies or the show itself. The show is at Japan on Film on Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram, so please be sure to follow us. If you'd like to support the show, you can donate on japanonfilm.com, purchase from our advertisers, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Join the Film Stories Podcast Network Discord from the link in the show notes to connect with me and many other cinema fans and podcasters.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.